So we're born, we grow up, we make friends, we have troubles and challenges along the way, we get some education, we end up perhaps getting married, perhaps having children, working, retiring. We go through all of these things in life, but in the process, how much are we actually focused on the main thing, the purpose for which we actually came to this earth realm? Peace and love, everybody. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, the host of the Sunday Hope and Healing session, where we do our best to offer you encouragement, inspire hope, and to actually bring about healing. The healing we do through a methodology or modality referred to as Transcending the Matrix, which is really a holistic approach to address a person's spirit, mind, body, and body of affairs, all aspects of a person's beingness, right? And so our focal point for today is actually dealing with keeping the main thing the main thing. Keeping the main thing the main thing. Now, I know that there are a lot of things that happen in life that call forth and what we perceive to be a need to pay attention to it. I know there are a lot of things that happen in life where we're pulled in different directions and tugged in this direction, and there are things certainly that we need to focus on, that we need to acknowledge, that we need to give some energy to. Greetings, Kenya Kwame. Good to see you in the space today, my brother. There are a lot of things that happen in life, but a lot of things that happen in life that we end up giving our energy to, that we end up giving our attention to, aren't necessarily the things that are the most important things. And while there's some things that are very important, what's most important is that we're tending to our spirit. A reality is that we came into this earth. We came into this earth. We weren't made in this earth. Get that distinction. We weren't made in this earth. We came into this earth. So where were we before we came into this earth? We were dwelling in the spirit realm. We're dwelling in the spirit realm. And then we end up coming into this earth experience. And in a lot of ways, we forgot who it is that we really are. We forgot where it is that we really came from. We forgot our true home. We forgot our true identity, right? We come in and we enter into this matrix of third dimensional beliefs of separation and limitation. We end up developing all of these fear-based thought processes based on the things that we're kind of socialized to buy into in this world. We buy into the idea that the people who look different than us, that think different than us, that worship different than us, who believe differently than us, that speak differently than us, that there's either something wrong with them or there's something wrong with us. And so from a fear-based perspective, where there's this false evidence that appears real, we end up having our antennas up, thinking that this group or this person, that there's something wrong with them, and we try to defend our stance. And then we have all of these things that come up that can create a sense of, in a very real sense, a sense of brokenness. Like what the Bible talks about as sin, I refer to as just brokenness. That's to me is a better way of understanding it, transcendent of the moral judgments that we place around it. The fact of the matter is that people do a lot of things out of a position of brokenness, and they enter into states of brokenness from traumas, things that they've been through in their life that they haven't overcome. And in so many instances, people experience brokenness in the context of other people acting out their own brokenness. Karen, good to see you in the space today. I'm sending a bunch of love in your direction. Hope that it reaches you and makes a difference in your life. And then we have these concepts of limitation. And a way that I kind of want to touch on that concept in terms of limitation right now is as it relates to this thing we call time, right? And so we think about all of these things that we have to do. We've got to get the children off to school. We've got to, get the bills taken care of. We've got to do all of these different things on our job. We've got all of these different things that are calling forth, we perceive are calling forth our attention and have to be done fast, quick, and in a hurry. And then in the midst of that, we sometimes kind of drown out focus and attention on our spiritual selves. We fail sometimes to take intentional time to commune with Spirit. We sometimes feel like we don't have the time to do the things that matter most, or to prioritize what really is ultimately the main thing. And we do that because in a lot of ways we forget in our prioritization of things that are important to us. It's so easy to focus on this body and the things going on with this body, right? I just run my body down and ended up getting COVID and didn't have really much energy to do much work on myself. And so I was very presently aware of my body and what was going on with my body, right? There are we feel hunger, we feel physical pain, right? We have these experiences on the level of the physical that really grab our attention and often grab our attention strongly. And so it's easy to focus on what's going on in the material realm, in the physical realm, right? We focus our attention on, not saying it is wrong to think about or put energy into things that will generate money, into things that will actually sustain your physical body in terms of eating and other things that you do to tend to the physical world. But the physical world isn't the only world in which we live. It's not the only world in which we exist. And in reality, it's not the realest world in which we exist. And it's not the biggest part of who it is that we are. And so one of the things that I've come to learn and realize on this journey, on this spiritual journey, on this journey as a healer and as a person who's blessed to be able to not only facilitate healing of other people, but able to, and blessed to be able to give people access to be able to do that for themselves and others also, in terms of like training other healers, teaching other healers, or teaching people to access the healing power that is hiding within them, right? But one of the things that I've learned on this journey is that if there's something going on in the physical body, there's something going on in the body temple. Why do I call it the body temple? Because it's a temple that your spirit's hanging out with, right? It's a space where you get to express your spirit, right? And so when something's going on in the body temple, there have been some other things that have been going on that haven't been recognized or properly addressed. They haven't been properly resolved. There could be something going on emotionally. There could be some anxiety. There could be some denial. There could be some unresolved sense of betrayal. There could be some some fear, there could be some worry, there could be some doubt, there could be a whole series of unresolved negative emotions, right? And if these things in the emotional realm aren't properly dealt with, they'll end up having to make it to the physical realm. But the emotional realm doesn't start within itself, it comes from someplace else. Okay. We hear a lot of talk today about mental health, right? A lot of talk about mental health. It's interesting because a lot of times what people are kind of referring to in the conversation about mental health is how it ends up manifesting emotionally. And so there's a link between the mental and the emotional, although there are nuances between the two. So from a mental standpoint, there are things that we think. There are things that we focus on mentally, and then those things have a way of manifesting emotionally. For instance, if you're walking along a path and you see something in that path that upon seeing it, you think it's a snake. It's your thought process where you're thinking that that's a snake. You're going to, in all likelihood, have some changes that are going to take place within you emotionally and physiologically. You're going to probably feel some degree of nervousness or fear. The adrenaline is going to begin to kick in your body. The amygdala, that part of your brain that really stimulates that fight or flight mechanism, is going to kick in. Your heart rate is going to elevate, as well as your blood pressure, right? And so these are things that are ending up taking place on some level, rooted in a thought. You see this, what appears to be a snake. It turns out, as you get a little bit closer, that it's not a snake, it's just a stick, or it's just a water hose or something. But you see this thing that you thought was dangerous ended up stimulating all of these emotions, and then when you are able to kind of clarify your perspective and you have a different thought, you then begin to think, oh dang, that's not really a snake, it's just a stick. I'm not in danger. The all clear signal in your brain turns on, your heart rate begins to lower or begins to decelerate. Those stress hormones begin to calm down, and you begin to return to a state of homeostasis, right? But I'm just using that as a simple example of how thoughts or what's going on mentally impacts your emotions, and then how that ends up actually impacting your physical body. But it doesn't stop there, right? There's a spiritual discord. There's a spiritual discord that is ultimately at the root of all sickness, problems, and dis-ease. I started this off earlier, saying that who and what we actually are at our core is spirit. Who and what we actually are at our core is spirit. That's why when, at least in the African American community, which I'm a part of, sometimes when a person makes their transition, what we call the ceremony, sometimes rather than simply calling it a funeral, sometimes we refer to it as a homegoing. A homegoing, as if they're going back home. Where is home? Home is the place you originated from, right? Home is the place, that's your center, right? Some of you perhaps go to work, go to school, go run errands, and then what do? You return home, right? in a similar sense, in terms of our souls, in terms of our spiritual being, we come from home, we visit the earth, and we return home. We go back home, we go back to the spirit world. But the thing is, when we enter into this physical world, because the physical world is so in your face, you know, most of us, when we're born in a traumatic environment. There's fluorescent lights. There are people who are excited. You know, your mother is probably screaming and in a lot of pain. There's a lot of chaos going on. You come out of this protective environment and you're brought into this world where there's all of this stuff going on. You end up having the umbilical cord cut where you're having to breathe for the first time on your own. And then one of the first things that happens, you're slapped on your backside. You come into this world traumatized, crying in this strange environment. And if that isn't bad enough, then you're smacked, you're punished for coming here. And in the process of this, all of the things that come with a spirit being born in a body in this earth realm is that we have a great sense of forgetfulness. And that is, in a way, is programmed in from the time we exit the birth canal. I didn't actually exit the birth canal. From the time that we exit the womb. Right? And so we're like hit with all of this stuff. And then through the process of life, there's a series of ongoing programming that pushes us in a direction of focusing in a lot of ways on our physical survival. And in the process of focusing on our physical survival, trying to keep the things which will cause us harm at bay. And a lot of the things that we think of that will cause us harm, we think of in terms of those things that will pain us physically and those things that will pain us emotionally. Because we all have experiences where we end up feeling both physical pain and emotional pain. And the emotional pain tends to be connected with other souls who are operating in physical bodies who've also forgotten who it is that they are. And so operating in a mindset of brokenness, in a mindset of forgetfulness, in a mindset of, just to call a spade, darkness. You know, we end up being further programmed to believe that the world isn't a safe space, that we aren't safe. And because we're not, we have to put up a lot of defenses to try to protect ourselves. And the way that we go about protecting ourselves is through our thought processes that are coming from an askewed view already, through fear-based thinking that's rooted in that false evidence that appears real. And so we're digging ourselves deeper into the illusion, if you will, digging ourselves deeper into this false evidence that appears real. We're strengthening and deepening neural pathways within our brain that have us travel down these thought roads, if you will, that end up leading us to the same destinations that we've arrived at previously. And those destinations are things that tell us that we're not safe, that we're in danger, that the world is cruel, that people are evil, that we can't trust anybody, that we've got to look out for ourselves and nobody else because nobody else is looking out for me. And all of this fear-based thinking, which actually takes us further and further away from who it is that we really are, because we've been so distracted by the illusion that we've forgotten to keep the main thing, which is our spiritual well-being, the main thing. We've forgotten to keep the main thing the main thing. And so we fight and we wrestle and we toil in our fear-based thought processes. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the tearing down of strongholds. That the things that are binding us, the things that are holding us back, the things that are imprisoning us, we're looking at from a 3D perspective, but it's ultimately a spiritual thing that we need to engage with, and a spiritual thing that we need to engage within ourselves, right? You know, there's another scripture, and I'm a minister, so I relate a lot to the Bible. But these things are truths that, independent of what your religion is, I think it still speaks to. There's another scripture in the Bible that talks about we don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities and forces of evil in high places. We're engaging in all these ego battles with other people. But that's not really the basis of the battle. And the more that we're engaging in these ego battles with other people, the more that we're engaging in, whether it's nations, political parties, spouses, co-workers, companies, whatever the case is, we end up engaging in these different ego battles. Ego, that part of us that tries to edge God out, we're trying to engage with other people in a way that is trying to edge God out of ourselves and edge God out of that other person. When in reality, when we're keeping the main thing, we're operating from a place of spirit. We're operating from a place of pure spirit. And we're seeing with clarified vision. And when the more that we remember that we are ultimately and completely loved in a way that defies description, there's nothing that we can do to make us unlovable. There's nothing that we could have done to any other person to make us unworthy of love, and there's nothing any other person can do to us to make us unworthy of love. It doesn't matter if somebody else has betrayed you, if somebody else cheated on you, if somebody else violated you in some way. People might try to tell you that you're damaged goods, but God never sees you as damaged goods. God still always sees you in the purity of love and loves you with a pure love. And so the root of all of our sickness, problems, issues, and I've got this copper bracelet on that says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life. What are we guarding our heart? Why are we guarding our heart? The idea is to guard your heart so that only good things come in. So that you're thinking on the things that are holy, thinking on the things that are lovely, thinking on the things that are of good report, thinking on those things which are virtuous. And therefore, because that's where your attention goes, that's where your energy flows. Energy follows consciousness. And as you're thinking on those things, you know, there's a relationship between the head and the heart. There's a relationship between the two. If you think pure thoughts, you're able to have a pure heart. If you're able to have a pure heart, you're able to think pure thoughts. right? And the best way to get there, to think pure thoughts and to have a pure heart, is to keep the main thing the main thing. Take time to commune with Spirit. Take time to commune with God. Take time to get in touch with your own inner self. Meditate on the innate goodness that is within you, and maybe it's hiding within you. Maybe it's buried deep within you and seeking to make its way to the surface. Seeking its way to make its way to the surface. And maybe you've buried it down because you've experienced disappointment. You've experienced being let down. You've experienced feeling hurt. You've experienced things not working out the way that you wanted them to. You've experienced all of these things in your life over the course of however many decades that have caused you to stuff things down, and sometimes have forgotten to, or maybe didn't even know that you could reach down and call forth the essence of you that actually has power over all of the power of any enemy that could seek to do you harm. And by the way, the enemy is not the person in the other political party. The enemy is not the person who looks different than you. The enemy is not somebody who chooses to use their free will in a way that is different than how you choose to use your free will, or how you would want them to use their free will. The enemy is not a person who's in a different religion than you are. The enemy is not the person that you share a home with that seems to have an attitude issue. The enemy is never another person. The enemy is our own thought process, or that part of us that entertains negative and destructive voices, right? All of us have these tapes that roll in our head sometimes. Sometimes we're receptive to hearing things in the spirit realm from the dark side, maybe, that would tempt us to stand in judgment of other people or of ourselves, that would tempt us to do harm to other people, that would tempt us to use another person without focus on how it's going to impact them, or even ultimately how it's going to impact us. You know, I read something years ago that in a situation of domestic abuse, the brains of both people are affected. The brain of the person who's the quote unquote victim, as well as the person who is the perpetrator of the abuse. But it said something, and this really struck me as interesting, that the brain of the person who is the perpetrator's brain was impacted more significantly even than the person who was the victim of the abuse, right? And so, we all have these different things going on that are rooted in false belief systems, and because our mindset is sometimes very fear-based, we then become receptive to fear-based thoughts. We become receptive to the utterings of perhaps even spiritual entities that might whisper things in our consciousness, if you will. We become receptive to the naysayers that say, no, you can't do that. You'll never be able to do that. You'll never find someone to truly love you. You'll never find success. You'll never get that job, whatever it is, right? But as we become more and more receptive, as we spend more time communing with Spirit, As we spend more time sometimes intentionally reminding ourselves of who it is that we really are at our core. That at our core, we're a drop of water from the ocean of God. At our core, we're pure love and divine light. At our core, we're spiritual beings made of the same stuff that God is made of, that has command and authority over all of the things that would seek to imprison, restrict, limit, and bind us into a lesser version of who it is that we are, right? At our pure essence, we're safe, we're protected, no harm can actually come to us. But the reality is we're not often focused on our pure essence. The reality is we're often focused on the physical stuff. And I'm not saying that the physical stuff doesn't matter. What I will say is the physical world makes a wonderful servant, but a poor master. And if we allow ourselves to be mastered by the things of this world, then we're setting ourselves up. We're setting ourselves up for all that this world can offer, for all of the limits this world can offer. It can't offer true freedom. It can't offer true love. You've got to connect with something spiritual to truly connect with the essence of love. Now, I'm not just talking about simple limerence or infatuation or lust or codependent emotional attachment, but pure love, pure joy, pure fulfillment, and ultimately realign with that sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. That sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. It's not a temporary thing. You get a new car, you're happy for a little while. You get a new house, you're happy for a little while. You get a new job, you're happy for a little while. You get a new love interest, you're happy for a little while. You get a new piece of jewelry, you're happy for a little while. But those things aren't sustaining, nor are they supreme. They're not sustaining, nor are they supreme. The way to enter and experience that supreme satisfaction that is self-sustaining is by realigning with who it is that we really are and realigning with the source from whence we were birthed. I'm not talking about our mother. I'm not even talking about Mother Earth. But we were birthed out of spirit. We're spirit, birthed out of spirit. Came into the world in order that we might, a world that, quite frankly, there is a lot of darkness. Darkness isn't really a thing unto itself, by the way. Darkness is merely the absence of light. It isn't something we need to curse. It isn't something we need to banish. It isn't something we need to be angry at. It's something that we merely need to infuse with light, because in the presence of the light, the darkness automatically disappears. And so I maintain that the main thing, or to put it differently, that the purpose of human life is to descend into the earth realm, though a place where there may be an abundance of darkness, and to infuse into the consciousness of the darkness the awareness of the presence of the light. I've got a ring light on, I've got a desk lamp on, and I've got a window that are all bringing light into this room so that you can see me clearly, right? I can't speak in terms of the window and the sunlight that's coming in, that's dependent upon the rotation of the earth. But last night I was on a Zoom, and I turned some light on, and the darkness went away. It would have been darker if the lights weren't on. All you need to do to get rid of the darkness is to turn on the light. I hope and pray that there's something that you're hearing in these words that are coming out of my mouth today, that you find enlightening, that there might be something in the words that are being shared today in this Sunday Hope and Healing session that might bring some new level of light into your awareness. So some of the darkness may dissipate, and thus the fear and the fear-based things might dissipate, and the light bulb might click on within you. My prayer is that the light within me might stimulate the light within you to shine even brighter. Greetings, Faith Rivers. One of the dopest names that I have ever seen of any human being, by the way. My hope and my prayer is that we might all, whether gradually, instantaneously, or eventually, that we might return to the truth of who it is that we really are. That we might reaffirm within ourselves the light. That we might be the light that shines in the darkness. And that we might more and more fully and more freely be expressed spiritually in terms of the essence of who it is that we are. And so that brokenness may be mended and healed and transformed and transmuted. That the brokenness might be transmuted into wholeness. That the darkness might be transmuted into light. That the fear and the bitterness and the negativity might be transmuted into love. That's how my late grandfather, John A. Hall, would say it. Love. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about love, like Earth, Wind, and Fire told us several decades ago in their song, All About Love. Go check out the song if you get a chance. It's all about love. And my prayer is that we will each love ourselves enough. We will each love ourselves enough to make the main thing the main thing. That we'll love ourselves enough to look for spirit, even though it might be hiding in the situations that we're experiencing in our lives. To look for the presence of the light of God's love in the midst of whatever might be going on in our lives, because those things are just distractions from what it is that's really true. Though that stick might look like a snake, it's not actually going to harm you, but your belief that it's going to harm you will cause your body and your physiology and your mental health to be altered and compromised. A Course in Miracles says that in my defenselessness, my security lies. In the Bible, it says, when I am weak, then I am strong. We sometimes think that we can do it all on our own. I'm a reasonably intelligent person with a reasonably high IQ, and perhaps you are too. And perhaps you're resourceful. Perhaps you have been able to figure a lot of things out through your own intellect. But guess what, beloved? Even though you have, and even though you are bright, and you are intelligent, and you are resourceful, and you can perhaps problem solve in a lot of different situations, whatever your own best thinking is, still has you landed wherever it is that you are now. And so there's a bigger mind that's at work, because the reality is you're only using 5 to 10% of your brain capacity anyway. And no matter what educational program you may have been involved in your life, 5 to 10% was never going to be a passing, it was never going to give you a passing grade. And so we've got to tap into the deeper mind, the greater mind. We've got to tap into the seer of all things, the knower of all things. We've got to tap into the one whose eye is in every place and who's present and who is everywhere equally present. There are things that are going on in our lives that we're only seeing a small fraction of it. Like the blind person who touched a part of the elephant and they thought that the part they touched was the whole elephant. No, they weren't getting the whole picture. They weren't getting the whole puzzle, the whole panoramic view of everything that was there. And so it is with us. But the more we make the main thing, the more we remind ourselves that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, the more that we remind ourselves that we're a drop of water from the ocean of God. And while we as a drop of water are not the entirety of the ocean, we as a drop of water from the ocean contain within ourselves all the properties of the ocean. And I'll tell you something about a drop of water. Every single drop of water on planet Earth is seeking its way back to the ocean. It's seeking its way back to the source. And so it is with us. Consciously or unconsciously, we entered into a world where we seemed like we left spirit. And the only place that we actually left spirit is in our minds. And we're endeavoring in this life journey, which is ultimately the main thing, to make our way back to spirit in our minds and in our hearts. And so I'm going to just do a few corrections to support us in making our way back to spirit. Not that you have to die in terms of your physical body and stop breathing, where you're no longer sucking wind and we're having a home going for you. No, but rather that you're able to, in the presence of your body, still make your way back to the truth of spirit. Still make your way back to the truth of God. Still make your way back to that deep, deep, deep sense of divine connection. Because the only place that you can go and get away from God is in your own mind. The only place you can go and get away from God is in your own mind and thinking that you aren't present with God. And perhaps you want to hide from God because of the things that you do, or the mistakes that you've made, or the things that you're engaging in, choosing to engage in, and maybe you've got some shame about it. And so you might want to hide from God. But guess what? You don't ever need to hide from God. Those are the times you most need to reveal yourself to God, expose yourself to God, or expose the thing that you're feeling or fearing to God. We don't pray so that God knows what's going on with us. We pray so that we know that God knows what's going on with us. And so, God, I know you to be a healer. And I give great thanks for this beautiful privilege of being able to demonstrate you as a healer on the behalf of everybody who's tapped into this right now, for the purpose of neutralizing the root cause of rejection of our truest selves, which is to say rejection of you. From every thought process, every cell in our body, every strand of DNA, every string particle of our existence, every atom, every fiber. To transmute that into and replace it with a sense of divine connection with our truest selves, a sense of oneness with you, and a sense of deep, 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 deep knowing that has also made its way completely to the surface of who it is that we really are as spiritual beings, safe, loved, guided, and protected. And I bear witness to our wholeness on this date and in this time and space called now. Thank you. Thank you for this gift of your divine love. It is done. It is done. It is done. And we'll go ahead and make a couple quick corrections, and then we'll close it out for today. The first thing I want to address is the collective consciousness of humanity. Within the collective consciousness of humanity, we have this fear-based thinking, right? So in terms of transmuting that into a perspective of realigning our consciousness to the Holy Spirit or the whole Spirit of God. Yes. All right. Let's look at religious indoctrination. All right. I'm not knocking anybody's religion. I want to make that clear. However, in all of the religions, there are people who are teaching and sharing. And sometimes that teaching and that sharing of divine principles and of divine truth is filtered through their own fear-based thinking. So let's look at religious indoctrination from those who their teaching or their things that they imparted to us was rooted in some level of distorted perception or distorted reality, or a desire to manipulate. That came up as an issue. Let's resolve that and transmute that into us being able to have a profoundly clear sense of righteous discernment. All right. So be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, to be able to get rid of the dirty water but not throw the baby out with it, to be able to recognize the good and filter out the bad, so that we're only taking in that which actually will be ultimately nourishing. Now, with respect to that, let's address the dark night of the soul and fear of having to face the dark night of the soul. All right, so let's look at that fears of the past projected into the future, and fear of being alone or being isolated or being disconnected from that which you felt some sense of security in connection with in the past. But for you to be able to have a sense of security, that your ultimate source of security is connected with God, and wherever it is that God is leading you, directing you, and taking you in the moment, right? When I was teaching job search classes for 5 years, we started teaching that in the world, my father told me that he only interviewed twice in his life, right? Before I was born, he was working for the company. He ended up being promoted in the company, and then ultimately the company ended up being taken over by a larger company, and so then he had to interview with that company that was taking over the other company. And so he essentially stayed with the same company his entire professional career of 30-something years. That doesn't happen too much anymore. So job security still exists today, but not in the same way that it did before. And so we started teaching people about portable job security, that you maintain a sense of job security not by staying at the same company and the same job that you had been in for X number of years, but by really keeping yourself relevant and staying connected to a useful network and some other tools. And so job security may not look exactly like it did before, but the job security for you can still be present in a similar sense. Not talking about job security, but talking about just a sense of security overall, a sense of well-being overall. A lot of times we feel threatened by the experience of loss or the fear of loss, or things change. A lot of people have a fear of change, but you don't have to have the fear when you know that you're safe in the palm of God's hands, so to speak. All right. And so being able to really trust your spiritual protection, your spiritual guidance, your spiritual provision. All right. And the way to build up that confidence is by commitment to spiritual communion. So let's strengthen that commitment to spiritual communion. All right. All right. Now, let's help to, rather than being aligned with, in your thinking with people who have fear-based thinking, let's align your thinking with people who have love-based thinking and who've reached a certain level of enlightenment. By the way, on your journey, you may have had mentors along the way, and if your mentor does a good enough job, you outgrow your mentor, right? And you become a mentor. And so what level of enlightenment you perceive someone as being in the past, that may serve you for a little while, and then you might need to go somewhere else. You might need to make another step. I am not in the same place spiritually that I was when I was younger. The folks who I gained valuable lessons from, those things were very valuable for the season of life that I was in. But as I continued to move and grow, those things didn't feed my spirit in the same way anymore. And so I went in different directions, and I've been hopefully on this upward trajectory. Hopefully you're on this upward trajectory, right? And so in that sense, by the way, let's address fear of not really progressing and transmute that into faith and trust in your spiritual progress and honoring the process of your spiritual progress. And so sometimes it seems like we're going through life and it seems like we're just going in circles, where we've come back to the same place that we started. It's like, oh my goodness, I thought that I made it past this. I thought I was beyond this. And now here I am dealing with the same thing again. I thought that I was past this, and now I'm feeling triggered, right? It isn't necessarily that you haven't made any progress when you come back to that circle. You could be moving in a spiral, in an upward spiral. And so, yeah, you may come back to some what might feel like similar places. But maybe it's not affecting you to the degree that it once did. Maybe you're able to see things a little bit differently in the place that you're in now than where you were then. Or maybe when you get there, then you get into that funk. Maybe you don't stay in the funk quite as long as you did before. Okay. And so let's look at the negative programming that we continue to subject ourselves to because we are programming ourselves negatively with negative self-talk. So let's transmute that negative self-talk into being able to speak life into ourselves. To be able to speak life into ourselves, even those moments where we're dealing with some setback, or we're dealing with some darkness, or we're dealing with some fear, to be able to speak life. Not that we're in a state of negative denial, like we're not going through what we're actually going through, but being able to acknowledge, okay, this is what I'm going through, but this isn't going to stop me. It's what I'm going through, not what I'm stuck in. And it might feel like you're stuck because you might be there for a while, but you're growing through. You will get to the other side, right? And as you're going through, you're growing through. You're getting better. You're getting stronger in the process, all right? And so let's look at, greetings, Melissa Kelly. Good to see you in space today. Yeah, it's easy sometimes to speak on your past errors, your past mistakes, your past slip-ups, your past falls, as you said, instead of your past come-ups, your past victories, your past successes. All right, sometimes we have to do stuff on purpose because sometimes the default setting is the fear. The default setting is the negativity. So we sometimes will do that naturally, but to think a different thought or speak a different word or to focus on something differently, we've got to do that on purpose sometimes until it becomes more habitual, right? And by investing time and energy and possibility and hope and love and light and all of those good things, focusing on those things more, a reality is that you've had a whole lot more successes than you've had failures. You've had a whole lot more successes than you've had failures. For every single mistake that you've made, there's been something that you've gotten right. And then there have been a whole lot of other things that you've gotten right that you don't even give yourself credit for. And so let's also strengthen us to be able to see victory, to be able to see the end from the beginning, but not see it from a fear-based perspective, but see it from a love-based perspective, where we can see our victory, no matter where it is that we are. Sometimes we have some good things going, and then we think it always ends badly, and then we put energy into that. Okay, rather than that, let's strengthen us to be able to focus on times where it ended well. You know, there was a time, I'll share this briefly, there was a time where I was somewhere and it was pouring raining and my windows in my vehicle were down. And I didn't have an umbrella with me. And I had set my intention that I needed to let the windows up, but I wanted to stay dry when I did it. Okay? Everything in my senses were telling me I was going to get wet. You know, I ended up praying and I acknowledged that in the prayer. And I want to stay dry. Everything in my senses are telling me I'm going to get wet when I go to let the windows up in my vehicle. I acknowledged that, and then there was a shift. And that shift was, but I know that with you all things are possible. And then I started giving examples of things, phenomenal things that had taken place before, things that we might consider miraculous, things that I didn't see a way of how those things would unfold, but they did. Sharing my, reflecting on my own and even speaking to my own experiences, the experiences that I had heard from others and the experiences that I'd even read, right? And I kept focusing on that. And before I knew it, I was able to go outside, let my windows up and stay dry in the process. And it happened very, 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 very quickly. From time where sheets of rain were coming down, it was like I was going to have to walk through a waterfall to get to the car. And not only did it stop raining, but the sun came out. I didn't even have that in my thought process as a possibility because of how hard it was raining in that moment. But I opened up space for possibility. And I want to strengthen us to open up space in our thought process for possibility of wonderful and miraculous and fantastic things unfolding for us, and fantastic things unfolding within us, and fantastic things unfolding because of us, right? And really even more so because of our alignment, because of our alignment with God, because of our alignment with the truth, because of our alignment with the good, because of our alignment with the ultimate source of supreme satisfaction, right? And to just make room for the fact that these wonderful things are possible. Not say that, you don't have to say that it's guaranteed, because there'll be that part of you that won't necessarily believe that, and then you'll have this internal conflict going on. But just starting with the idea that it's possible, that in the grand spectrum of the cosmos, where there are 200 to 400 billion stars just in the Milky Way, the closest of which would take you 4 years to get to, traveling at a speed of 186,000 miles per second. And then there are then some 30 billion galaxies or so, that in the spectrum of the great and vast universe, of all things that are possible in the great expanse of space, of the cosmos, that it's possible that things will work out for you. Just possible. That's a great starting point. Anyway, I'm going to do one more correction, and then we'll go ahead and close it out for today. And this last correction that I'm going to do is to strengthen our memory of a time where we felt safe in the spirit. A time where we felt safe in the spirit and confident in that sense of safety. All right. I'm going to say this, and then we're going to pray and close out. A sailboat is able to stay completely safe in the harbor. But that's not what the sailboat was designed for. You, beloved, are able to feel completely safe in the spirit realm before you entered into the earth realm. But you are a spiritual adventurer. And you came as a light into the place of darkness to infuse into the consciousness of the darkness the awareness of the presence of divine light. You still are that light. Even though there may be all kinds of things around you that might seem like darkness and that might greatly tempt you to believe that you are something other than the light. Pure love and divine light is who you've always been and who you always will be. And on that note, God, thank you so much for the healing of today. Thank you for the reminders. Thank you for receptive hearts and minds to receive that which can help inspire us to keep the main thing, to remember who it is that we really are, to stay connected with spirit in the midst of all of the demands of worldly affairs, and to continually reconnect with that which is ultimately real and that which is ultimately true and that which can bring us into the experience of the sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. Thank you for these and all other blessings. I affirm it is done, it is done, it is done in Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach. Ashe and Amen. Well, many blessings to you today, beloved. It's certainly been my pleasure to be with you. Again, as we close out today's session, today's Sunday Hope and Healing session, I bid you adieu as we endeavor to enter into that supreme state, into that sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. Until we meet again, I send you forth with peace and love. Catch you next time.